Hey all, this is Devin Galaudet. I made this promise that I was going to be doing this every day, so this is day 2 of how to write better. Yesterday we talked about procrastination, and obviously one of the things about procrastination is that we don't do it. That's why it took me 42 days to get this started as my New Year's resolution, and here we are in February, and I'm finally getting it going. Today we're going to talk about reading. And this is it's actually one of my favorite subjects, because if you ever have come to my house, you are going to see a truckload of books because I love it. And, here's the funny thing. I was told years and years ago, like when I was in the 3rd grade, that one thing I never had to worry about doing was being a writer. And so may Mrs. Jones roll over in her grave that I am now a writer and have been for quite a while. So anyway, we're going to be talking about, and so reading and procrastination kind of go, for me, is like reading is the antidote of the procrastination part. Because let's say if you're sitting down and you are writing your memoir, or you're writing your work, or you're writing your great next short story, or whatever it might be, many of us, or at least this is what I end up hearing over and over and over again, is that people are waiting for some sort of a magic moment to, they're waiting for some lightning bolt of inspiration to hit them, and then they can sit down and write. And then hopefully that in this one sweep, in this one moment, they're going to be somehow able to write an incredible short story. They're not going to have to worry about editing. They're just going to go from start to finish, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And more often than not, that is not the case. More often than not, you're going to sit down, you write a sentence, you get up, you walk around the room, you sit back down, you write another sentence, or maybe you delete the first sentence, and the process goes over and over again. And at some point, if you are determined and you're committed, which is really, these are 2 important elements of writing and writing well, is doing the work of just sitting down there and doing it. But what if you want that jolt of inspiration? One of the best ways in order to do that is to be a good reader. So what does that mean? That means you read a lot. You read everything, and you start reading it not only in terms of enjoyment, but you start reading it in terms of what people are doing and how they're saying it. So I'm bringing you 2 books today that hopefully will inspire you. You won't have to go more far than your public library in order to get them. And they both always have stories attached, because, that's kind of what I do. And by the way, this is the thing that I always have to say, is that I'm Devin Galaudet. I'm the editor-in-chief of In the Know Traveler, which has now been around for 13 years. We focus a lot on travel writing. I have an MFA in creative writing, and my book, 10,000 Miles with My Dead Father's Ashes, is going to be in bookstores everywhere in September. You don't need to worry about any of that, but just so to let you know that, I kind of back up my stuff here. And this is just one of the things that helped provide inspiration for me. So the first one is that when I was in my BA program, I had a professor who said, and I don't even remember, I was like totally zoned out in class, but what he said was, Shakespeare, Emily Dickinson, implying that these were 2 super deluxe powerhouses in the literary universe. So my first thought was, Emily Dickinson, isn't that some woman wearing petticoats and some sort of a hairnet in the late 1800s? That may be true, but what I ended up doing when I was getting my master's degree is that I ended up doing a major report on Emily Dickinson, because I kind of thought, what do you mean, Emily Dickinson equivalent to Shakespeare? And because I asked him that after the class, and he's like, no, dude, you need to read Emily Dickinson. And so I did. I ended up writing a major report for my senior thesis on her. And she is a freaking genius. Like, her words still play, like every read stuff, and it's just, that it's dated, that it's old. This stuff still flies. And so Emily Dickinson is brilliant. The things that she did with punctuation in small stanzas was amazing. And I think one of the things that stood out to me most importantly about her is that, like, 120 years after her death, I remember that at the time I was writing my report on her, there were 10 books that were coming out about Emily Dickinson, because she's a real compelling, interesting, unique individual. And again, I think it's a testament to her creativity that not only was she ahead of her time at the time, she may be ahead of her time right now, which is a remarkable thing to say about a writer. So if you haven't read her, I mean, this is library stuff. So, you know, this is my copy of all of her works. I think it's incredible stuff. And so I think you're going to love it. The other thing is Mark Twain. I've got like 5 giant football-sized books of his, and they are all brilliant. And perhaps one of the ways, like, again, we're talking about, you know, writers that are around 120 years ago. And so if you're sitting there going, what do these people have to teach me, or how can I get inspired? If you want to read something really great, it is his commentary of, I think it was Lord Tennyson's writing of The Last of Mohicans, and he tears it to smithereens. In other words, he talks about how bad the writing is and goes into the details of what should have been done. So on the one hand, it's funny, and on the other hand, it's instructive, and on the other hand, he was one of the best, one of the most prolific writers to have ever lived. Again, there's a reason why you can get all these big, giant, fat books by Mark Twain, and he left his mark in really amazing ways. Oh, hey, Constance, welcome. We're talking about writing, and we're talking about writing better, and to get sort of inspiration, because one of the things that writers need to do is be able to sit down and trudge through it. So we try to look for the lightning bolt. Sometimes that happens where you sit down and words just spill out of you in some magical and remarkable way. But for most of us, that's not the case. Most of us have to kind of make some sort of a deal with ourselves to get the writing flowing, to get it started. Because usually what will happen for me is that if I force myself to write, the first 10 minutes is terrible. Or maybe that first draft is going to be terrible. But the words that I spill out are not going to be my favorite words. But the point is that if I keep writing through the slog of the experience, there's going to be a moment that clicks where all of a sudden I'm going to be on a run where I can get something happening. Marcelo, welcome. Good to see you. And by the way, if you guys have any questions, if you have any comments, you know, absolutely just kind of jot them down here. I can either answer them now or you know, perhaps in a whole future thing. I'm going to be doing this every day because it's just something that I love. It's something that I'm doing to just realize how much I love books and writing. And this is one of those things that I kind of promised myself that I was just going to keep doing. So if you are getting stuck, make sure that you sit down with a great book. Does it need to be one of the old masters like Emily Dickinson or Mark Twain? No, of course not. It can be a comic book. It doesn't really matter. What it means is that there's going to be some sort of communication on the page, or somebody you know, because even if you don't like the book, somebody spent many, many hours, an editor spent many, many hours pouring through every word to make sure that it was just so. I mean, that's actually happening with my book at this very second. Somebody is reading it and going through it for, I think, for like the 5th or 6th time. And so my point is, you sit down with a great book and you open it to anywhere. Again, I highly recommend, matter of fact, there's a book by Mark Twain called Letters from the Earth, where the criticism of The Last Mohicans, which is, it's in. And so that's something that will amuse you. And if you keep reading good writing, what tends to happen is you see somebody turn a phrase and it gets the intellectual and the emotional and it gets the creative juices flowing. And that's the great time to write. Sometimes matter of fact, I take a little notebook like this, and I will, when I'm reading, and if I hit something that inspires me to think of something that is not plagiarism, but is something that kind of like, ooh, that's an idea, I may jot that idea and work it into fiction or coming from a perspective in creative nonfiction. So I think this works no matter how you slice it. There are so many good writers. Matter of fact, you know, ironically, there was probably far less to choose from in the 1800s. Now there are hundreds and thousands of really wonderful storytellers and writers all around. So you should get to know them and what they're about and the kinds of things that they do well. Matter of fact, I may bring this in for next time, but I remember there was a book by Salman Rushdie called Haroun and the Sea of Stories. That first page has always been memorable to me. It's sort of a political response to when he got his fatwa after writing Satanic Verses. And so he got a lot of criticism for sort of writing a children's book. But that said, it was really a remarkable bit of writing, children's book or not. And that first page in that book was one of my favorites of all time. So I'll probably read it in some point in the future. So anyway, if you guys have any comments, write them down. As always, we're going to be talking about books. We're going to talk about how to write better. We're going to be talking about how to get to those difficult things. Because one of the things, and this is just one of these stories that's going to be in the future, I wrote a memoir, and writing a memoir is hard business because there's a certain point where I have to tell family and friends that, I talk about what I talk about, and it's not personal, but it's hard because you kind of maybe talking about family secrets. Maybe you're talking about difficult subjects. And for you to write to your audience, you have to leave no stone unturned. You have to invite them into what your experience is so that you can have an exchange. In other words, somebody who's buying your book or somebody who's reading your literature has to be invited into your world. You have to give them a reason to be turned on by what you're doing and how you're doing it. And the good news is that, even if Mark Twain or Emily Dickinson is not your cup of tea, that doesn't mean that there aren't millions of other great books out there that may, in fact, inspire you to tell your difficult story and tell your truth, even if it's fiction. I personally believe that all fiction comes from a measure of truth. And if you are doing that, then you're giving yourself the opportunity to gain readers of your work and eyeballs and inspiration, and maybe you'll inspire somebody else who needs to go out and tell their stories. So this great tradition can keep coming. So anyway, I think that's all I have for today. I'm going to be back tomorrow. I'm promising myself it's going to be at 1 o'clock. If you're seeing this on Devin Galaudet, my fan page, please click the like button. The book is also pre-order, and if you have questions, please write them down. I would love to answer them, whether you're watching this live or at some point in the future. I'm going to be putting this stuff on not only on my fan page, but through my blog, devingallaudet.com. And I am also going to be putting it on YouTube and a bunch of things. So there's going to be lots of different ways to see this. I hope that you're going to keep coming back. And until then, I hope you guys are writing well and reading and enjoying. And by the way, if you have any book tips, because I'm always looking for the next great author, the next writer who is going to inspire me to write more. Anyway, I hope you guys are well, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.